Hello, everyone. This is again a Food Addiction Institute video. And today we're so pleased to have Michael Collins, who happens to be our chairperson for foodaddictioninstitute.org and is also a father that has some very special young people who experience some very special things that I want to have him share with you. So, Mike, will you take it away?
Well, hello there, and thanks for having me. I'm kind of reversed roles here. I'm usually the interviewer, but this is a story that I do like to tell. I've told it on some podcasts and whatever, but we'll skip all the how I got sugar-free and whatever, and we can start. I had been sugar-free probably about a year and a half or 2 years, and at the time, my wife at the time, I talked her into my belief system, if you will, that flour, sugar, and caffeine were probably not the best things for a fetus or a growing group of a growing baby. We didn't know it was a group at the time. We just thought it was one baby at the time. Turned out to be twins, but so my ex-wife did not have any flour, sugar, or caffeine in the womb while she was pregnant, and the boys didn't have flour or sugar until they were 6 years old. And I'll tell you that story in a minute. But I think a more interesting story for the moms to be, one of the things that I just can't seem to square in my mind is this inability for women when they get pregnant to take control of this sugar and caffeine and drugs in their system. They can literally quit alcohol and drugs, even if they have a substance use disorder, literally the hour that they find that they're pregnant. It's an amazing concept, and they'll do it. And I guess folks haven't really read up enough on sugar. My mom gained 60 pounds on a 105-pound frame with me. And after talking with her and over the years of their sugar addiction, she's basically said that's all she ate during the pregnancy was sugar and flour products. And so my ex-wife gained a total of 21 pounds, and 14 of those pounds were two 7-pound babies, okay? So she didn't really gain any weight during the process. And this kind of crazy, banana split with pickles on it, I have these cravings thing, is really just, you're nervous. I believe personally that you're nervous, you're a little scared, maybe it's your first child or, whatever, the relationship's not going well, the money's, the finances. And then, you revert to that comfort food, that drug. And I think it affects the children. I really believe it. And I just don't think that in this day and age, with the research and the science about the sugar, that we have complete and 100% control of our kids' diets until they're 4 years old, approximately. And so that's what we did. And we did not give them any sugar, flour, caffeine, and they didn't miss it. But I'll tell you one thing that did happen. This is kind of a warning. What I like to do when I talk about this with folks is split it into two groups. And those two groups are the folks similar to what we did, which is they never had sugar. They weren't experienced with it. They didn't know what it was. They weren't drawn to it. They didn't think about the candy in the candy aisle. They never asked for it because they didn't have any idea what it was. And then there's a group that is most folks who've already started, the kids have already been exposed to sugar. And so we'll break it down as we talk about the two groups. But just to finish up my story is I think that the experiment worked personally. I mean, the kids did not have sugar until they were 6 years old, the first time they ever had real sugar. Now, we gave them some snacks, and if I had to do it again, I wouldn't do it. Some of the snacks from the health food store, which I found out were probably not the healthiest either. But they didn't have white cane sugar or whatever processed sugar in them. And I remember this. My mother used to say I was a perfect angel, Cynthia. She said I was and I said, Mom, come on, everybody says that. And she said, no, really. When you would go fall asleep, your hair would get all wet and you would form a perfect halo around your head from sweat. And so I'm like very curious. I had never seen this before in my kids, right? And so we were at a birthday party. They were 6 years old. Now, during this time period, we had fought the Montessori school, the grandparents, the parents of other children, just about everyone that we declared we're bringing our own snacks for them, thought that we were depriving them of a good childhood or what have you, you know? And it was just really an all-out battle, a fight to keep our wishes intact, right? So they're 6 years old. We're at a roller skating rink, and the cake and ice cream comes out, right? And another kid's party, and both their heads craned up, looking at me. They didn't even say a word. They just, again, Dad, can we this time? Kind of look on their face. And we just gave in. We had been 6 years battling everyone, trying to keep our wishes intact, and we just allowed them to have it with the other kids. And so you probably know where this story goes. That evening, I went into their room, and guess what I found? 2 perfect halos around their heads soaked in sweat, hair soaked in sweat, and a sweaty pillow and a sweaty nightshirt. So here we are, 6 years in, I've never seen this. And then I see the kids in sugar withdrawals basically that evening. And so that day, next day, we regained our resolve, and for the rest of their childhood, only when they went out to other people's birthdays were they allowed to have have any real sugar, and we never had it in the house. The result of using my own children as human guinea pigs, I think, was successful. And one of the things that you and I have been studying and talking about a lot on the Food Addiction Board and other things is the science now around the brain and the brain center rewards and that kind of thing, and that they're calling now diabetes, Alzheimer's diabetes 3. And that really does affect your brain and the brain fog that happens that people start talking about. Even people that don't have to lose any weight or have diabetes, I have an Olympic athlete and a marathon runner who does 100-mile runs who were severely addicted to sugar. And the biggest benefit they got was the relief of the brain fog. Well, my kids eventually, they're older now and they went to college, and I'm of average intelligence, I believe, enough to get along in the world anyway. And my SAT, my college entrance exams were pretty close to average. And, but my children got like perfect scores. I mean, they are literally card carrying certified geniuses like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg, perfect scores on their student exams, their college entrance exams. And they were always intelligent in school. They always get straight A's and everything. And I just really genuinely, with all my heart, now diagnostically, probably going to be 20 or 30 years before we can prove this with brain science and what have you. But I just believe that they grew their brain that first 1,000 days. That first 1,000 days of development, the brain grows. I don't know. I don't know the science, but it's, the largest growth spurt of the brain for children. And when now the 5 years in, we're studying dopamine and serotonin and GABA and all this stuff, I really believe that addiction, sugar addiction, they are calling it like a health issue, right? Like diabetes and the body and that kind of stuff. But in reality, the reason people can't stop and the damage that I think it's doing is more in the brain and the centers of rewards and the dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, GABA, even adrenals, and the big one, oxytocin. They're really affecting this white powdery substance that's been basically reduced to a drug is affecting the kid, the kids in the womb and as they grow in their first 1,000 days. And so I've just really developed this belief that, Dr. Lustig, the esteemed researcher of sugar, believes you should be 18 years old and have an ID to purchase sugar. And I concur. And I think that 100 years from now, they're going to say, they used to give sugar to kids, right? And I think it's going to be an adult pleasure. And I think, it's probably still going to be legal. But I think that society was going to change demonstratively over the next 20 or 30 years. So anyway, that's the short version of my story. I'm open to any questions, and we can go into the helping the kids who have already had sugar off. We've had a lot of success. One of the fastest growing little groups we've done on Facebook is Sugar Free Kids. It's now a page and a private group if you want to get in there, if you're interested in maybe working with your kids and even at least reducing sugar a little bit. We're there to help. So.
Wow. You know, I thought while you were talking that it's this deprivation that people experience for others' children, like your children were being deprived when in fact they were being successful in a world that we usually are caving in and giving in, and you weren't. So I was curious about a couple of things, chocolate and the caffeine related action there.
Yeah.
And also about Coca-Cola and cocaine. Remember that
I do.
Started with cocaine as one of its constituents.
Sure.
It's kept sugar, which may have been even worse given.
And caffeine.
Right. And Nicolavina is another name that I'd like to get out there for parents to look at her materials, because they've been instrumental in bringing food addiction to the fore, and her work with rats and cocaine and sugar that gets quoted. So it's starting to make the little tipping point there. We hope.
Yeah.
So if you address some of those issues and talk a little more about sugar-free kids.
Well, yeah, I mean, you talk about the cocaine and people, some people maybe not even realize it, some of your listeners, but at the turn of the century, Coca-Cola actually had cocaine in it. It was one of the ingredients. And they had to take it out when the first time they developed the Food and Drug Administration. So I actually believe, things evolve. We learn, science comes to the fore and helps us to understand. And that's what the FDA is there to do. And so I think that's going to happen with sugar. As far as the caffeine and in the chocolate and then the sodas, they never had chocolate or soda either. So, and I believe that I shouldn't say it this way, but the training wheels for people to have a caffeine addiction or a soda addiction begins in childhood. I mean, the idea of giving such a small body, a 1 or 2 or 3-year-old, a Coca-Cola with caffeine and sugar in it just seems to me criminal. I mean, I'm going to get probably a lot of hate mail, but it just seems criminal to give this to a child. Knowing that if you would just spend 5 minutes in my inbox or 5 minutes on my messenger, that you would understand that adults have a really difficult time quitting these substances, even though that they're hundreds of pounds overweight, or they're getting diabetes or going blind or losing a limb, and the doctor said they're going to die, they still can't quit. So the idea that you would want to take the risk, even if all the science proves wrong, which we know it's not gonna, but if it just happens, if the risk is just minute, you wouldn't want to expose it to your children. So yeah, I'm one of the things I wanted to get out there and folks about sugar-free kids and stuff, and I find this in our people that reach out for help both at the Food Addiction Institute and my stuff at Sugar Addiction, is that the folks are really pioneers in some way. They in their job or their career or school or their family, they weren't afraid to step out and do something that goes a little against the grain that currently exists, And so those folks are very successful in both quitting themselves, which I want to come back to in a second, but helping their children get off of, right? And the reason I want to come back to that is because here's the part that most parents do not want to hear. And both camps, meaning the people who opt for a sugar-free pregnancy, or the people who say, okay, my kids are 5 and 6 years old, they're a little bit too, they've gained some weight, and Dr. Lustig says we have an epidemic of obese infants, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds and above. Obviously, it's a third of children are overweight or obese, and we have an epidemic. But what parents who are listening to this do not want to hear is that you basically have to do this first. You have to put your oxygen mask on first. My mother always told me, don't eat sugar. She had a stash, like a hidden stash, and we knew exactly where it was. The kids are brilliant, brilliant. Sugar or no sugar, they are brilliant. And they are going to know if you are breaking the golden rule, or the rule of do as I say and don't do as I do. If you're actually eating the sugar on the sly, on the side, and doing it when you don't think they're watching, believe me, they're watching. So it's important that you do it as a family. It's important that you look in the mirror and say, hey, what's my issue with sugar? And do I want to, and then do your research and be that pioneer and say, do I want to take the risk of giving this possible attraction? Let's not call it an addiction. Let's call it an attraction, a dependency, call it whatever you want. But should I risk giving this unnatural attraction to this product to my children? That's a question that I think we try and answer it at Sugar Free Kids all the time. So anyway, I hope that answered the question, and I'm glad to go into more detail if you want.
What Sugar Free Kids is for kids only? Can parents sign up?
No, it's actually for the parents.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So as far as getting there and signing up, they just go to sugarfreekids.
The .com's not up yet. I'm probably going to make it a .org, but the Facebook page is up. Oh, it's a Facebook page. And I'm toying with something that's really growing quickly and I'm really having fun with. It's called Sugar Free Man. And that website's almost ready. And it's a cartoon character, because all of these, how shall we say, food producers, cereal producers, heavily sugar-laden stuff, they all market with cartoon characters, right? And so I've come up with Sugar Free Man and registered the domain name sugarfreeman.com, and it's kind of a Superman character with SF on his chest instead of just F, sugar free. And so I'm hoping that it catches on a little bit so that parents can have a, how shall we say, a reference point for the kids, get some children's books out there and whatever. The sugar companies or the cereal companies, they pay a lot of money to the television folks. So this will probably have to grow online, but whatever. I think that everything's moving online anyway, but I'm having a lot of fun with that. And again, it's more for the parents at the beginning, because we have those choices. Mm-hmm. Eventually, like I have a coach that works with us, and she got her daughter, who's 9, off of sugar. And it was a little bit of a struggle, but basically the same things that I'm talking about. She got off sugar first and became a coach, mm-hmm. and her mother owned a bakery, so it wasn't easy, and she worked there. And so then she started talking to her daughter, just really like an adult, very honestly, that we don't have it around here. Mommy doesn't use sugar, and you can have a little sugar with your friends, but we're not going to have a lot around the house. Literally a year into the program, or a year into her working with her, now the daughter tells people about it. Well, we don't have sugar at our house, and sugar's not that good for you. And we have it a little bit sometimes. She does, same thing as us a little bit. But anyway, it's I hate to keep quoting Dr. Lustig, but he thinks it's like a tectonic shift, in society. It's going to take 20 or 30 years. I hope those numbers are wrong. I hope it takes 10 or 20 years, but especially for the kids, because when you and I were young, an obese child, an obese friend, it just didn't exist. We had 3,000 people in our high school. There was maybe 2 obese and maybe a few people a little overweight. That was it. And that was before high fructose corn syrup got into everything. And, the science is now backing this all up, right? But anecdotally and observationally, you can see the films of people in the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s even, where no one is overweight, no one's obese. And now, 40 years in from the experiment that is high fructose corn syrup and demonizing fat and putting so much sugar in all the products that are in cans and bags and bottles and stuff, we end up with a population that's in danger. And with socialized medicine in Canada and Great Britain, those systems are no longer going to, they're literally not going to be able to function financially because of the metabolic syndrome and the metabolic illnesses, diabetes and stuff. And so it's a crisis. We're at crisis point, and I feel we have to start at the next generation, which is the kids. So I'm rambling on my soapbox, Cynthia. You help me get off of there.
I love to hear you ramble. One of my loved ones was a person that had not been diagnosed with diabetes, but would awaken with a sweat-filled pillow. And I said, this is not ordinary. This is not appropriate. There's something going wrong. And it was diabetes that was then identified.
Sure.
And I have a sister who was a swimmer in high school and was internationally ranked.
Wow.
And died at 368 pounds.
Oh, dear.
So
yeah.
Family is wrecked with this difficulty. So I so appreciate your sharing today. I hope you get a lot of mail and sugar-free kids, just blossoms and blooms. And on the website at Food Addiction Institute, there are getting started information for parents, and that can be used for their young people as well. The best and easiest way is with you and your wife, that you at that time said nothing at the time that you were getting pregnant. So that's a wonderful beginning time. Yeah. And if people see this, and what if we didn't have sugar? Would we have dental caries? Mm-hmm. Would we have, and you name the list of things that come from all of the sugar. And Gary Tobe's book, The Case Against Sugar, is a wonderful primer for people to see that it really is not a substance we should be ingesting, ever. I have lived without it for 21 years, and I'm grateful.
That's awesome.
So, Mike Collins, thank you. Is there any last word of wisdom to a parent who's still thinking that this is deprivation?
The one thing I always like to focus on, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is this pioneer spirit. Okay, it really is. Phil, the founder of our little band of warriors, the Food Addiction Institute, says that this requires an inordinate amount of support. So you've got to, your family is not going to understand. If you've kind of researched, or you ended up watching this type of a video, if you've researched a little bit, they're not going to really understand the research that you've put in, the understanding that you've garnered, that kind of thing. And so it's important. So if you've been the first person to go to college, or the first person to even go to high school, or a person to get a job outside of the field of the family, or to move away from the hometown, or whatever, something that you did that was different in sports or athletics or school or business or life, and you are not afraid to kind of go against the grain just a little bit to get some research, join a little tribe like ours, join the Food Addiction Institute, get our little mailings, or go to Facebook at Sugar Free for Kids or sugaraddiction.com, whatever, and find some folks who are doing what you want to do, what you think has become something that you're interested in. Even if the kids are now on sugar, the reduction would be very, very helpful as they grow. And it'll help you. I mean, most folks, and I think you would agree with this, will do stuff for other people, especially their children, before they'll even do it for themselves, right? And so if you think that I am not below or above, I don't know what it is, bribing parents to, let's put the kids first, but I'm really after you. How's that? Let them blame it on the kids. Say, oh, I can't have sugar because we're trying to get the kids a little less sugar. Whatever works, I'm game for it. So.
Oh, Michael Collins, thank you so much. And again, thank you to Food Addiction Institute for this video, and to go on to our YouTube site. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was a great idea. I really never would have thought of it. So that's great. I'm glad we did it. All right, take care now.
You too.